I've spoken a few times now, hopefully not too repetitively, about why I think it's very important the regulations are clearly defined. Um, the new issue that is sort of emerging now is this issue around public parks. It's becoming quite a vocal debate point. I know that on LBC, both Nick Ferrari and Majid Nawaz had strong views about this, and although they're not exactly ideological bedfellows, I mean, Nawaz would be sort of centre left, centrist. Ferrari would be more to the right. They both were of the opinion that closing parks down would be a step too far. In fact, apparently, haven't seen the clip yet, but Nawaz was pretty angry about that, incensed, as LBC reported it, as he saw it was punishing the many for the idiocy of the few. Um, I think a lot of people are kind of judging on are jumping on a judgmental bandwagon here. So they've seen people sunbathing, they've seen people being doing things that they don't have to do, being reckless, but they're then assuming that everyone who's going out is an idiot. Um, Here's the thing, I mean, I personally am fortunate. I've got my own garden. I've got enough space to exercise, so I don't need to go to a park, and I'm not going to. Um, Well, I'll say that. I mean, if parks are still open and it's a place to walk, I don't know. I mean, there is a real risk here that we could actually have a sort of mental health crisis in this country. Um, and it does annoy me a little bit how people are oversimplifying it that, oh, just stay at home idiots. If someone is in a tower block, right, or let's say they have three or four children, and they're cramped up, or they live in a council estate. It may be that the local park is the only venue, the only open space that they can get out, they can stretch their legs, they can get fresh air. Um, so I'm a little bit uneasy, annoyed by people who jump into conclusions about this. I'm not talking about sunbathers. I don't think sunbathing is necessary, but the idea of police going around fining people who may be on their own or even in a couple um, seems to me to be a big stretch away from those reckless people gathering in groups. Um, and we've seen people who should know better. I mean, Jack Grealish, the footballer, and Amir Khan, the boxer, both put out public messages about, oh, follow the guidelines, stay safe, everyone. Then what did they do? They went out and get homes. And I think that sort of thing doesn't win much public favour when wealthy sportsmen are flouting the rules. Um, we're all in a collective sort of national effort here, and I think the Queen's message, was direct. It hit the right tones. It was only about 5 minutes. It wasn't particularly long, but I think it was the right message. And with the news that the Prime Minister's in hospital, it brings it home just how sweeping this situation is. But I still say that, for example, any move to close parks must be an absolute, absolute last resort. Um, at the moment, people are abiding by the regulations, but having such a sweeping thing as just closing all parks, and I've even heard speculation, or I've seen vague reports, and I should say this is not concrete, suggesting that if people continue flouting rules, then exercise could be banned. Now that would be a big mistake because do you want to cause another health crisis with people not getting exercise? I think that would be ridiculous. I assume that would mean exercising outdoors. My issue with this is that exercise part isn't very clearly defined. Now, you might say, oh, but it's just common sense. And it should be. I mean, exercise to me is going for a walk, doing push-ups, lifting weights. I can do all those things. But like I say, for some people, their exercise may well be going to the park. So if the park's closing, where are they supposed to go? They can't go to a gym. and they may not be able to do it in their own residence if they live in a tower block. So it's a legitimate issue. I mean, Nick Ferrari's pitch was if people are keeping the social distance, then don't penalise them. Um, I can understand, if you work in the NHS, you're seeing death and maybe you've had colleagues die, you're going to have strong views on this. But I also feel that this is a situation that we need to be careful about because I don't think it's reckless or cavalier to want exercise. And the further this lockdown goes on, one or two things could happen. People could either get very adapted to it and it'll become the norm, or people will start getting very impatient. Um, we can't conceivably stay in this situation forever. So let's say we hit the curve, this famed curve in the next week or so, where there's kind of a peak number of deaths, then it starts dropping down. I personally think maybe the way to go would be to have a gradual easing of restrictions at that point, a very gradual easing of restrictions, so that we don't just have a second wave of this. But we cannot conceivably have a situation where this just lasts for an indeterminate amount of time, because then, we could talk about people who are dying, but the quality of life for all of us will be totally ruined, and that could be a real mental health, excuse me, that could be a real health issue in of itself. On top of the death toll, we could see an increase in suicides. So people who are trivializing, like, oh, just stay at home. All I'm saying is that for some people that is not black and white. It's really not. Um, and I'm a little bit uneasy about some of the rhetoric coming across, and there is a risk we could become a nation of many tyrants. Um, a lot of people will also say, well, the police are quick to impose this. Where are they when, in regular times, when people are victims of crime and, they don't tackle that? They're too busy language policing, instead of actually tackling knife thugs. Now, I don't think that's entirely fair. I do think officers are in a very stressful job and do at times risk their lives. On the other hand, I also think that they prioritize such things as they really shouldn't prioritize. This matters because how the police respond to this will be judged for generations to come because it's a national situation. Um, so I think forces really need to get it right. They need to show that they're taking action against the idiots, but they also need to be careful not to come across as overzealous. We're not a police state, and I don't think that a national crisis is an excuse for us to become a police state. Um, that's not the British way. It never has been. Um, so we have to get this right. But as to those people, having barbecues or gathering together, throw the book at them. I've no sympathy with them at all. That is incredibly reckless. It's openly spiteful of the regulations of other people's health. But penalising people who are on their own, even if they're sunbathing, which maybe they shouldn't be doing, I'm not sure that should be the priority. Because if they're sunbathing, okay, it's not really essential exercise. Well, it's not. But if they're on their own and they're meters away from other people, should that really be the priority? I'm not sure that it should.